and welcome to Cookbook, brought to you by Sundress Academy for the Arts. Today, while all of them are down in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, at the Writing and Booze Workshop, I'm here with you, and this morning we're going to have a special guest, Maggie Smith, who is the author of The Well Speaks of Its Own Poison, out recently from Tupelo, is here with us this morning, and she is going to teach us how to make her grandmother's molasses cookies. So, very excited about that. We all get to learn about some special cookies. Let's have fun. Today our guest is Maggie Smith, who is going to show us how to make her grandmother's molasses cookies. So we have everything measured out. How do we do this?
Okay. Well, there's probably a proper way to do it, but I'm not going to do it that way.
It's fine.
I am going to put the butter in.
A stick and a half of butter.
Stick and a half of butter. It says unsalted. I always use salted because it's what I have in the fridge. I don't think it matters.
No.
Sugar. This is a cup.
If at a certain point you're not writing these things down, that's fine. We're going to get the recipe from Maggie and we'll put it online.
It'll be fine. Alright, this is a new mixer for me, so we're going to try not to splatter this everywhere. Alright, so I probably should have softened the butter a little bit more, but it'll be okay.
So which grandmother's recipe is this?
Okay, so my mom's mom, whom I call Dabble.
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 How did that come about?
Dabble, the legend behind Dabble is that when I was a baby, she would bring me Jell-O and feed me Jell-O, and I could not say grandma and I could not say Jell-O, and so I would say Dabble. And so she became Dabble,
sure.
And then she became Dabble for everyone in the family because I couldn't say Jell-O or grandma. So every birthday cake she ever had until she died, it was Dabble. Everybody called her Dabble. I think there's some part of the family that called her Granny Annie because her first name was Anne. But to me, she's Dabble. My first book is dedicated to Dabble and has lots of poems about her. She was sick when I was working on that first book, and I was spending a lot of time with her. So this was her recipe. She cooked and baked all the time, and most of the stuff she made was far too complex for me. Like, I'm not going to make peach island pie.
What is peach island pie?
Something I'm not going to make. But cookies are easy.
Sure.
So all I'm doing is creaming the butter and the sugar.
Okay.
And the key is just to mix it together really, really well. You don't want to mix it too much when you get the dry ingredients in because then they get kind of tough.
Sure.
So you can mix the hell out of the butter and sugar.
Oh, which is the fun part.
Which is the fun part. And it's also, if you're using a hand mixer, I'm getting like a major arm workout.
Sure.
Okay. So I want that to be a little bit better mixed, but I'm going to get some wet stuff in there to help that along.
Okay.
1 egg.
1 egg.
This is not the order that we're really supposed to do things in, but I found that it doesn't matter.
It just doesn't matter. That's fine.
And the molasses. This is
a 1/4 cup of molasses.
And I think this is the dark molasses. I think you can probably use any kind.
Okay.
The tricky thing is you end up having to buy molasses for this recipe because people don't have it handy, and then it just sits in your pantry done bad, not in the fridge.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's working out well. So yeah, you'll have to like Google molasses recipe.
Sure.
So you can use the recipe. Probably make like gingerbread pancakes or something.
Ooh. Okay.
Okay, so we're doing all that. Get it nice and smushy. And then I do the spices, and this is a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg,
right.
A 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves, a 1/2 teaspoon of ground ginger, and then this also has the baking soda in it.
Cinnamon and baking soda?
Okay. And really whatever you have, like if you don't want to buy nutmeg, but you happen to have ginger and cloves, I don't really think it makes a huge difference. Like sometimes I only have nutmeg, I'll just use nutmeg.
Okay.
They're still really good. These are like the best kind of cookies because you can even eat them for breakfast. Don't tell my kids I said that. But they're so good with coffee. Okay, so now we have kind of like a slurry. Okay. And we can start adding the flour in little by little. You don't want like a giant poof.
Okay.
So we don't look like we have powdered wigs. I have a stand mixer when I do this at home, and I throw like a dishcloth
nice. And then just
over the
turn it up
mixer,
high.
and then just crank it, and
Nice.
it keeps the cloud in. Because you have to like, turn it up, because at this point it starts getting pretty dense. It's a firmer dough than say like a chocolate chip cookie dough, which is pretty wet. This is like a Play-Doh-ier.
And you said earlier, these are the cookies you make at Christmas time? These are the special cookies?
Are the special cookies.
All right, special cookies.
Santa likes these.
Santa likes.
I don't know about the reindeer.
Well, they get carrots.
They get carrots, and also we
Which
realized...
I think is bullshit.
I
if I was a reindeer, I'd want cookies.
You're doing all the work!
No kidding.
The fat guy just sits in the sled. So yeah, we made the mistake of like putting out molasses cookies and carrot sticks, and then like eating the cookies and leaving some crumbs, and then like my husband would gnaw on the carrots and leave like a little carrot. And then we have a daughter who happens to be smart enough that she was like, "Why are the carrots gnawed? It's not like the reindeer come down the chimney into the house.
They would be taken to the
Would
reindeer.
the Santa take the carrots to the roof?" We were like, "We don't know what Santa did." Oh, just kicking ourselves. Like, this is what happens when mom and dad stay up late with a gin and tonic trying to put together a bite, you know?
The best parts are when, like, my dad at a certain point just didn't care. Be like, Santa really wants a ginger ale. Can Santa get a ginger ale this year? Like, sure.
Santa loves watershed gin.
There you go.
So if you could just, with a little lime...
Could you cut some limes?
Could you just... Yeah, I should have known one year Santa put my banana seat bike handlebars on backwards. And I strongly believe that there was some Bud Light involved in Santa's problems. Christmas just becomes a totally different kind of thing when you have children.
Yeah.
So yes, these are like the cookies that you eat until you're sick. Like, my dad will eat these until he's actually in pain, but he's like, "I just have to keep going."
Or the ones my mom makes. She makes these raspberry Linzer cookies that are cookie and then raspberry jam and then chocolate and then another cookie with powdered sugar on top.
Okay, that sounds like more work than I'm willing to do.
That's why she only does them cookies.
Yeah, like those are the kind I buy.
Yeah.
But these are so easy, like it's a no-brainer. These and like the little peanut butter ones that you stick the Hershey Kiss into the top. Those are like my classic Christmas cookies.
So now, do you use these cookies only for good, or do you bribe people with them? Like, if you want to get someone on your side, you bring them a dozen of cookies?
I'm not above anything.
Okay.
So if that would work, I mean, if you know somebody who could be bribed with these cookies.
That seems to be a theme. When we had Ruth on last month, she was talking about
she made vegan, didn't she?
She made vegan chocolate chip cookies
That's hardcore.
And admitted that she bakes them to bribe people, to try to sway them.
Grease the wheels.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, it's not easy to find really good vegan cookies, so she probably has more mileage out of those. I think I may be shooting this all over your kitchen.
You're fine. So that is an underrated part of baking, we're finding out. That
my apron, I was going to bring my cool skull and crossbones apron, and I got it dirty yesterday making lasagna for my neighbors, so I don't even have it. So I was like, I'm going to wear a printed shirt that if I splatter myself with molasses, no one will know.
There you go.
All right, that is all we do.
Okay.
So the next thing we have to do is, my hands are clean, I washed them, you watched me wash them.
Yep.
I have to roll these into balls, and then we stick them into this little container of sugar.
Ooh, okay.
They roll in the sugar, and then you stick them on the cookie sheet. So it's just like a Play-Doh-y.
Sure.
You can, like, they're pretty soft. If you want to firm it up, you can stick them in the fridge. Like the dough can, you know, refrigerate for half an hour, and then it's a little bit easier to mold.
Okay.
But if you're baking in a hurry, or if you're with kids who really just want to get the stuff
To
out
play
of the
with
oven,
cookie
they want to
dough.
stick their... Oh, I don't let my kids do this part.
No?
Oh, God. gosh, even with their hands are washed, you don't know what they're doing when you turn your back. And nobody wants to eat cookies that some 6-year-old has had their hands
they've worn them
in.
as a mask.
Let's just be frank. Whenever somebody brings something over and they're like, my child helped, I'm like, and then I just throw it away.
Sure.
So.
You gotta get confident enough that you hand it to an imaginary dog at that point and then just drop it on the floor.
That's right. That's right. So I'll just start with a few of these. You just roll them around until they get all covered, and then you line them up. And they don't spread a ton.
Okay.
But we can probably only do like 3 in a row so they don't all stick together. So they're just like little sugar dough balls. And the batter is so good at this point that I probably would have eaten about 1/3 of that. So it says it makes probably 3 cookie sheets.
Okay.
I never get that much out of
Sure.
it because I eat so much of the dough and my children eat so much of the dough during this process. That's the best part as
Sure.
far as I'm concerned. Like the dough is sometimes better than the finished product.
Well, that's the only reason you buy like the take and break cookies. It's just to eat the cookie dough. You
Yeah,
never bake those cookies.
Yeah. So, 2 more. So there's not much of a science to it.
No.
They're really easy. And you can do them smaller. I kind of like them big. Because then if you can say, I only had 2, but they're like the size of 4 cookies.
It'll work out just fine. All right, so you've got to have the oven on at 350 is what
Yep.
you're going to bake these on for 15 minutes.
10 to 15.
10 to 15
I'll
minutes?
probably check them at like 12 because
Okay.
you don't want them to get too. I like them a little
A little crispier?
underbaked.
Oh, you
Yeah.
like underbaked?
I
Okay.
like them a little soft.
Sure. Okay. All right, so we're going
It's
to
just
put
me.
these in the oven. We'll let them bake, and then we'll sit down with some coffee and the freshly baked cookies and get to talk to Maggie for a little while. All right. We have the finished product here. Some delicious molasses cookies, courtesy of your grandmother,
Yes.
and all of the fun of making them. So, talk to me about the new book. You've been reading everywhere. It's been fantastically
It's been
reviewed.
good.
It is just fantastic as someone who's read it, but
Oh, thanks.
it's going really well.
It's
been-
going really
yeah.
well. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. When my first book came out, I was like working an office job and I had 2 weeks of vacation a year and I just couldn't get out to really do as much with it as I wanted to. So I sort of said, if I get another book out there, I'm really going to just gung-ho.
Just say
do
yes
it.
to sort of...
Just say
right.
yes and just
Yeah.
like as much as I can. And of course now I have 2 small children, so going gung-ho is a little strange.
Right.
But yeah, it's
That's
been
where
really
grandparents
good.
come involved. And
And husbands.
And husbands.
Yeah. So I've been, I can't really do like a book tour where I'm
Right.
gone and I can plan it out and have different stops because I can't be gone for any real period of time
Right.
because I'm the primary
Sure.
at-home person. But so I'm like driving to Chicago and then driving home and then like 3 days later I drive to Akron and drive home and drive to, so, but it's been really good. It's been good and the poems have been really well received.
Excellent.
I had someone come up to me at Thurber House the other day and say, I really don't like poetry. I really like your poems.
There you go.
And to me that was great. It's like,
Yeah.
like I hate mushrooms, but the way you cook them, they
Sure.
taste good to me.
It starts off and you're a little wary, but then it's the ultimate
That's
compliment,
right.
which is
And
great.
actually somebody in Akron, that's funny you said that, came up to me and said, it's like, I feel like your poems are accessible enough that I'm invited into what I think is shallow water, like I can manage, and then I get in and I'm like, whoa, I'm in deep water.
All of a sudden they're swimming.
And all of a
didn't
sudden
know
it's
that-
dangerous.
Right.
I really like that idea that,
Oh, right.
like, come on in, the water's fine.
Sure.
Now it's dangerous. Now you really have to be careful.
Right. So what in there is, do you have a favorite poem or anyone that you're sort of proud that it's...
No, I don't have a favorite.
Okay.
I feel like that would be kind of like they're listening.
it's right there. Thank
I love you all.
Yes.
Book over there. No, I mean, I don't have a favorite, although to keep it interesting for myself while I read, I'm trying not to read the same few
Sure.
every time. So, I'm trying to sort of rediscover the poems. Every reading I do sort of flip through and try to come up with some kind of arc for the reading that makes
Well,
sense.
for the groupies, for the people that follow you.
Oh
from
yeah, for the
reading to
people.
read.
Although there are definitely some poor people like my parents or my sisters and my husband who have seen me read a lot of times, and so I do try to change it up a little bit for them. There's one poem in the book that my daughter practically wrote herself when she was about 4, and it's called Lights Lemons. When she was 4, she came up to me just in our house and said, there were lights in the lemon trees so you could see the lemons, and a whistle so you could call your friends.
Right. You read that at the poetry forum reading, right?
I did, and it was the weirdest thing, because I don't know if it was from a dream she'd had or it was just this idea, but I thought, what 4-year-old says that? It was a little bit like bolt of lightning, and so I had her tell me again, and I wrote it down, and then I, drafted this poem where I kind of take those lines and sort of rework them over the course of several stanzas. And so that one I really like to read at readings because I like the story behind it, and she, I wouldn't have that poem if she hadn't walked up to me 2 years ago and said that.
I ended up, I've got those Emily As poems that are sort of the A plus B equals sort of a formula love poem, and they all, whenever Emily shows up at one of the readings, I read some of those, and then some of the poems have started becoming about her at the readings, listening to Emily As poems. Yeah. She gets really excited about
it. It's meta.
Oh, yes. Very excited. So what else inspired the poems in the book? There's a lot of different sort of children's narrative and some of the... I had this weird job several years ago where I had to read in galley form all of these children's books before they were published that they thought would be award winners. Okay. And then write catalog copy about the book to try to get the little paragraph.
The blurbs. Right. So I read like 500 books a year and wrote blurbs about them. And one of the books that came across my desk in galley form before it was published was this collection of Latin American folk tales.
Okay.
And so while I was working at this job, I read this book and I thought, these are so interesting, and the language was so just different and strange, and the structure was different from like the Hans Christian Andersen or the Grimm tales. And so in my lunch hour I was starting to draft these poems, and they turned into this series of 8 epilogues or fables in this book that sort of draw on that tradition. So the book really started with those. And then after I wrote a bunch of those, I thought, well, maybe I need to go back to the Grimm tales that I grew up with.
And revisit those with these new eyes.
Because, really the tales I grew up with weren't really Grimm. They were Disney, which is not the same thing. No. And so I went back to the collected Grimm and I was like,
this is fucked up.
This is seriously fucked up.
There's real terror.
This is not a children's book.
Yeah.
Like this is the stuff of nightmares. It was really terrifying, and also really exotic and strange and structured differently than I expected. And so I started kind of taking some of those and using them as like a scaffolding or a framework or a point of entry to then write about suburban Ohio and childhood and coming of age and adolescence and motherhood and the anxieties of wanting to keep yourself safe and your children safe, but not really being able to do so. You can't, really. No. There's only so much we can do. And you can't really keep other people safe without also keeping them from the excitement and adventure and wonder in the world.
At a certain point, that knowledge is going to carry over to them, and they all understand what fear is and what,
But that's part of life. Sure. And so, you can either keep them in a bubble, which is sort of not advisable for lots of reasons, and also probably illegal. Right. Or you can let them out and let them experience the world, and also know in your heart that bad things can happen. And that sort of tension is what's behind a lot of the poems.
A kid learning how to stomach fear. You don't want to scare your kids, but if they can sort of digest it on their own, a lot of things once they get, because our kids are the same age, once they get 7, 8, 9, 10, they're going to be able to handle some of these situations that are
you don't want to shelter them too much, but at the same time, I'm certainly not going to be reading Grimm as a bedtime story.
Right. Well, my daughter just did Safety Town this summer.
Violet did Safety Town. My daughter did Safety Town.
And so there's all these things
that building.
I'm being told that I'm doing wrong because she learned at Safety Town. And hold on, we need to do it this way, and a lot of correction and
the smoking truck and
they've scared them enough, but they've done it in a way that they're sort of like, well, okay, we need to be aware of this and that, and
Right.
So.
Well, there's a line in one of the apologues that's something along the lines of many things we tell our children are kind but not true.
Right.
The reverse is also true.
Yes.
Because, I mean, just even recently, my son thinks that every police officer is a good guy. Right?
Right.
So like even in
Right.
contemporary, and it's like we want to tell them that, and generally speaking,
Right.
if you're lost in a shopping mall or something happens,
Look
that is the
for a
person you
security
seek out. But
guard
there are
or-
complexities
Right.
that they are not yet aware of. And it's a weird thing as a parent, sort of having the big picture but only giving them a piece of it.
Yeah.
The piece that they're able to handle. And then as they get older, they get a bigger slice.
Right.
So I'm trying to keep the pieces small. But it's tricky.
Well, and when it comes to poems and different mythologies and different fairy tales and things like that, the vantage point of the child is always such an incredible entry point for
Yeah.
literature to take.
Yeah.
And so when you angle things just a little bit, it changes first what is your voice and what is your vantage, and then you're meeting something different,
Right.
and it makes it interesting.
Right. I mean,
It adds a thickness to it. I mean, there's a little bit of an uphill climb at a certain point.
Yeah. I mean, they see things differently. That's part of. I mean, being a parent's a lot of work, but
Right.
the real fun for me is watching them. I mean, I say sometimes I feel like I'm like a realtor walking my kids through a house that needs some work,
Sure.
and I'm like, see, this place has got really good bones.
Mm-hmm.
You could make it really beautiful. You know,
Right.
it needs work. This world that I brought you to,
Right.
but I think you're gonna like it.
This door exists, but you probably shouldn't go
I
through
think
that
you're gonna
door.
like
Right.
it. You know, this part is a little, the wallpaper's peeling. Maybe we shouldn't look in there. But yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing. I sort of feel like a tour guide,
Right.
and so especially in the past few years, having them as such a big part of my daily life. So much of what I do on a daily basis is explaining and answering questions, and that's definitely making its way.
It's
into
impossible
my
to
work.
put that down when you sit down to write. I mean, because
No.
it's with you all the time.
Well, and they ask, why is the sky up? And where does it stop?
Right.
And where does it start? And
The
what is
unintentionally
the world for? And
existential question.
oh my
is,
gosh,
yeah.
it's. I mean, they want to know everything.
Mhm.
And the weirdest thing is they think we're some sort of oracle
Right.
that have. I mean, I'm supposed to have the answers, and I don't have the answers to almost anything. and I mean, but part of the joy is also admitting to that.
Right.
Like, I'm a work in progress too.
Right.
Like, I'm bigger than you, but people are bigger than me, and people know more than me, and so.
And I feel like that's sort of a new tangent. Like when I was growing up, my parents never gave up that high ground. There was never a
monolith.
well, you know what? Let's figure it out together. I don't know.
Let's Google it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
no.
that I think that's been a kind of fun adjustment of things that I learned in my parenting. It's like, okay, well I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
Let's learn it together, and then it becomes a little bit of a process you can carry with them. But
I like that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think I saw my parents as finished products.
you're right.
Like, and it didn't occur to me, I think, until adulthood that they had inner lives, because we're so selfish as kids.
Right.
We just think that they're there as like service providers,
Sure.
and they're our parents. Like, that is what they are, capital P.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, part of what writing has done for me, and I think for my kids, is Mommy's going to be away for a couple days because I have some readings to do out of town, or I'm going to be on a residency, or here's a magazine that Mommy's in, or here's something. And so, even though I'm still home with them most of the time, they know that there's something else
Right.
to me and to what I do, and I think that's important.
Now, when they get a copy of a new book, do they mine immediately flip to the back to see my picture? They want to see, look, it's.
That's
do they
Daddy.
actually, yeah. That's how they enter the book is, it's Daddy. And, okay. And
It's
then
funny. I had when I
Yeah.
got the box of Well Speaks, I took it out and then I had them pose holding the pictures and like smile cheese, and it was really cute. And so now they know like what it is. And so
Sure.
there was a picture of me like in the dispatch recently, and when I dropped my son off at daycare, his daycare teacher brought it up on his phone and said, "Look, Rhett, who's that?" And he said, "Mommy." And I said, "What am I holding?" And I thought he would say Mommy's book or a book.
Sure.
And he said, "Poetry."
There you go.
My 2-year-old. And I
Excellent.
thought, okay, that's a parenting win. Like when your 2-year-old can say poetry,
Yeah.
Like, only in my house, you know, like, that doesn't happen. That didn't happen in my
Sure.
house. Like, I didn't know what poetry was when I was 2.
No.
Why would I have known that? And so, yeah, I mean, I think hopefully they think it's cool. Although when Lights Lemons, the poem that Vi helped me with, was published in a magazine, so it first came out in Salamander, I did put the check in her college fund, because I felt like that was ethical.
That's fair.
Because it's all my money anyway. And so when it came in the mail, I think she was like 5.5 by this point when it was finally published in print. And she was sitting at the dinner table and I read her the poem. And I expected her to be like, wow, Mommy, we made this together. Or I don't know what I thought. I thought it would be this like touching moment. And she said, I didn't say all that. And I was like all she's supposed to do is just tell me stuff that I dictate and then just print. Like, I'm just gonna mail that to a magazine, like done. And I said, no, like I worked on some of it and Mommy worked on that. And so it's kind of Mommy's poem, but I got the inspiration from you and we worked on it together. She was like not that into it. so yeah.
I've got in my first book a sequence of poems about sonograms.
Yeah.
And I read those at the Columbus Arts Fest because Belle was going to be there. And afterwards she made sure to tell me that, well, those are about me when I was inside Mommy, so it's not really me.
Oh.
So, well, no, you were going to come
she
soon.
Has she has feelings about when life begins already.
So
yeah.
Those aren't
politics,
about me. Those were.
I love it.
And she was excited to hear her name. That was enough to get her to jump up. And she got dressed up. She put on fake earrings. She did the whole.
I kind of love that.
Yeah.
When I had my book launch, Vi came up on stage. I did it at Wild Goose, and she came up on stage with me when I read Lights, Lemons.
Nice.
So I got to have my arm around her while I read the poem, and we have pictures of it. And that was probably like the best poetry moment ever for me. Like, just, it was kind of a full circle.
I did. I've got a small collection of kids' poems that I think might come out next year.
Very cool.
And I went to Belle's school and read. They're all about burping. Water balloons.
Things that
fantastic,
yeah.
And I read those at her preschool, and she got so excited.
Oh.
All of her friends knew exactly.
Well, they understand authors. Oh, yeah. They get it. I mean, they are readers.
I was not as cool as the lady who spoke to them about poisons, by the way. I was not. They thought the lady who came in and talked about poisons was the coolest, but I think I was number 2.
You're not as cool as the
true.
lady who talked about poisons.
Talked about poisons.
So, but poetry is sort of potent and can be.
Well, they had me read theirs.
And the book's called The Well Speaks of Its Own Poison.
There you go.
So there's sort of a.
One of it is called the Hippopotamus Challenge, and it's 9 lines of trying to say hippopotamus correctly. And they had me read that one 3 times. They thought that was great.
You're just finally like hippo. Okay, that's why people say hippo. Okay.
Yes.
I love that.
But when I go to elementary schools and teach poetry at individual schools, and
that's so cool.
The Hippopotamus Challenge is a hit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I write kids poetry, but I don't do it under my own name.
Okay.
And I only do it for like educational publishers, so it'll show up in textbooks. But I've never published any kids poetry under I use my kids' middle names as my pen name. Okay. So
if you know her kids, you can figure that out.
If you know my kids, you'll know. If you open like a McGraw-Hill book, you'll see lots of my poems. But yeah, I remember like the craziest assignment was they said we need a poem about how the duck-billed platypus's features are at once what make it strange, but also protect it and keep it alive.
Sure.
Okay. I wrote that poem.
Yeah.
Do you know that the duck-billed platypus, a male duck-billed platypus, has a poisonous ankle spur, like a gland on its ankle that is poisonous? It's in the poem.
idea. Okay. Well, yeah, you'd have
to.
Poison. Popular with all the kids.
Nothing's cooler.
That's why you got to take them to Safety Town.
That's right. That's why you have to take them to Safety Town.
So you said, I read you've got another manuscript that you're already working on?
I am. It's not done yet.
Okay.
So I've been sort of mailing it out to trusted advisors.
I've got 5 people whenever I finish something that I send it to.
I only have 2.
That's good. Well, I don't expect comments. I'm sure you're actually getting comments back.
I'm getting comments.
That's good.
Yeah, I have a couple people that I are kind enough to look and tell me the truth, which is important. Instead of just being nice. And like, maybe I need like 2 more people who will just be nice.
There are enough nice things written on the books already, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
So whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I just feel like it's important to be able to get some distance and send them to people that you know will be like, this is done. This is not up to level. Mm-hmm. This feels done, but it doesn't belong with these other ones. Mm-hmm. And so I have like 90 pages, which for me is a lot.
Right.
And I sent them to my 2 people, and one person said, I think it's done.
Awesome.
And the other person said, it is not done, which I expected from this other person, which is why I trust him with my books. And, but I was pleased when I finally got the manuscript back that the poems that he had removed or written question marks on were poems I was kind of waffling on.
Sure.
The poems he felt really strongly about keeping were the newest.
Okay.
So that made me feel like I'm going in the right direction with the new work that isn't out.
Makes you feel like you're always getting better.
Yeah, that's good.
Sure.
And that these poems aren't in print yet, so I always feel like more confident about the poems that have been vetted.
Sure.
And less confident about the poems that are sort of fresher and like no editor is like deemed them decent. Yeah. And so the fact that he was sort of showing enthusiasm for those made me feel good, but it's not there yet. I mean, I've managed to, now it's like at 82 pages, so like a few didn't quite make it.
That was one of the tougher things to sort of learn between books 1, 2, and 3 was, even if it's a poem that's been published in like a good literary magazine or something like that, if it doesn't work in the book, it's not worth it having in that
it's the
list of acknowledgement.
Thing.
Yeah, you just gotta. It just doesn't work.
No, and I know sometimes it's like, but it was in the Paris Review, but it doesn't really belong in that book. Or maybe it can, but you haven't written enough to like.
There's not enough
justify its existence there, right? So like, get there. It may be that you just haven't written the connective tissue between this little series and this little series, and you want them to play nicely, and maybe they can, or maybe they can't. I mean, I do manuscript consultation work too, and a poet recently sent me a chapbook manuscript and a book-length manuscript to give comments on, and one of the questions he had was, can they be one? Because they were both short, I mean, they were both on the shorter side.
Sure.
Can they be one book? And my answer was, I wish they could, but I don't think they can. Like, tonally, like one had sort of a more different sense of humor to it.
Sure.
You could argue that numbered sections, you could kind of make it all work. And some poets do that really well, where it feels like almost a greatest hits from the past 5 years and not such a sort of cohesive, but I don't know. To me, it just didn't feel like they wanted to be existing together. And that's a tricky thing.
That's tough to pull off.
That's, yeah. So, we'll see. I don't know where...
Does this one have a working title yet?
It does. It's called Weep Up.
Okay.
That I expect to stay.
Yeah.
The title poem is my daughter, when she was still in her crib, could not say wake up. She would say weep. Weep up. And she would talk to the birds.
So what portion of the checks from this book will she get then?
She could basically just get the advance from this book. My son makes some appearances. My mother makes some appearances. This is definitely a more, the Well Speaks of Its Own Poison is probably more of a project book. I'm not sure I love that term, but it has a lot of me in it, but it is definitely like a book that hinges on fairy tales. And but this book is much more straightforward.
Right. Well, I sent you that copy of Temporary Champions.
Yes.
And that was a project.
It's a project book.
That was studying about something and writing about it, and the only reaction to it was mine from watching the fight over and over and over again.
Right.
But I mean, sometimes it's going to come from you, and sometimes you get excited. I've got something finished about called Bombing the Thinker, about when they tried to blow up the Thinker outside the Cleveland Museum of Art.
Yeah.
And that was a research and going up to the museum and doing all sorts of stuff for it, and that was, much different than things that are like, I was telling you about those Maz's poems about the restaurant, and that was, personal experience and
they're just accrued.
Madness of youth and all sorts of things like that, and those you just sort of already have inside you. But
this book is accruing. I mean, and it's been accruing for years, because I was really done with The Well Speaks in like 2010.
Right.
So this book that I'm working on now has really been accruing.
Well, it won the prize when?
In 2012.
Okay.
But I sent it out for a few years before, and it was sort of like always a bridesmaid.
Right.
And I kept having to just be like, I believe in this book, I'm not giving up, I'm just going to keep plugging away. And I mean, the contest culture is hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a lock that like has 15 different chambers, and they all have to be perfectly aligned, and if one is just like slightly off, you're not going to get all the way through. And it could be that the first reader who's screening just puts you in the maybe pile, but like the final judge would have really loved it, or you get all the way through and the final judge doesn't like it, or I mean, you just don't. There's so many variables, and it just really comes down to getting the right poems in the right order in front of the right person at the right time, with all the wrong other people in their hands.
Right.
And that's really, I don't know how you do that. I mean, for me, it took like 6 years of just like, okay, I'm doing this again. Okay, I'm doing this again. Okay, I'm slightly revising. I'm doing this again.
When I was 22, I was a semifinalist at Black Lawrence, and then there was silence for like 5 or 6 years after that. It's just
with the same manuscript.
Yeah. And then it ended up going, well, obviously this just isn't. So revisited, went back, reworked, and
I mean, that's the tricky thing, is like, when do you take either a sort of near miss or crickets or whatever you get as the sign that you need to revise, and when is it just wasn't its time because another book just happened to be more urgent.
Right.
You know, I mean, I definitely had that, like, you know, being the runner-up for something and then finding out who won and then reading the book that won. And sometimes, okay, there are a couple times where that's happened, where I've read the book that won and thought, this is a damn good book.
Yeah.
And this book was probably just more deserving in the moment and just felt like more, like there was a more, if you're only going to get to publish one, this one just felt more urgent to that person, that it needed to be in the world. But there have also been times where I've read the book and I thought, like this book, and that's kind of painful. Like I'd rather read it and be wowed than read it and be like, oh, this is not my taste.
Yeah.
But it's not my taste, which means probably my book was not that judge's taste. And that's,
well, obviously they weren't going to pick mine.
That's right. If this is what they wanted, it makes sense to me. And so, I mean, a lot of it's just plugging away and like trusting.
Well, having those people, having the 5 people or the 2 people, just to sort of check you, and they know when you're going well and when you're not going well with the project. And I think part of it is we talked about how much poetry we read.
Yeah.
Just sort of always being reading and being able to gauge sort of what it is you're doing and is it actually So keeping not just, and you can always find great old books, but keeping reading new books and how the culture and the
and subscribing and reading literary magazines.
Yep.
Or, you know, if you can't afford to subscribe, go to your library or sneak into Barnes and Noble and
well, when you get your author's copy, read the whole thing they sent you, and not just yours.
Poem. Don't just take
No, the first
don't
moment.
Just Instagram your poem.
The first moment is for your poem. That's true. You just read yours. Oh, I'm fantastic, and then you.
See, I almost never really read mine when I get the literary magazine. I look at the
I make sure they spell my name
contents,
right.
And I like to see. I'm like, who am I around? Ooh, I'm after this and before this. Like, I like to see who my neighbors are. That always makes me feel good. I like to have good neighbors.
That maybe even makes you feel better than your own. Like you see the cast in there.
I don't need to read my poem again because really next to the neighbors, I'm gonna be like, oh, the neighbors are. Look at how the neighbors have trimmed their lawn. My lawn looks so. Yeah, I mean it's important, you know, and it's also like if this is how you want to sort of live your life and make your living, however you define that, then you can't just take from the system. You can't just submit your poems and expect them to be published and then not
you can't
donate to a press.
You can't only hear your own voice as much as possible. And
that's right. And it's also like it's a lot of these presses and magazines are doing this not for money, you know. I mean, they're doing it, and they're volunteers and they're interns, and I don't know. I just feel like it's the responsible thing to do to help support the community that you want to be a part of, and not just try to get something out of it for yourself.
Well, and I think both in the larger sense and then in the local sense. I mean, what we've been doing here in Columbus has been fantastic.
Oh my gosh, it's great.
It's a little overwhelming at this point.
There's so many series,
yeah.
and I mean, visiting. I can't get out to everything,
Right.
especially with the kids. It's just
Yeah.
like it's hard. I try to do as much as I can, but the good news is that there's, for everything I'm able to get to, there's 10 things I can't
Yeah.
make it to, and that's a good problem to have.
Well, and the sort of the cast of characters both in Columbus and around Columbus is fantastic and all pretty young. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
So it'll keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. You know, I think we have something like more colleges and universities per capita in
Right.
Ohio than any place else. So, like, if you think about it that way, we're constantly bringing in
New minds, new voices.
yeah. And faculty from all over. And
Sure.
so there's, I mean, it's a good place. It's a good place to be a writer.
I think so.
I don't know. I never needed to leave. I'm just here.
I grew up 50 minutes from here. So
Yeah. I grew up 20 minutes from here.
There you
So,
go.
and I'm
Which
still here.
Which hospital were you born in?
Riverside, and my children.
There,
so,
mine as well.
So my husband comes from Indianapolis, so whenever we drive by Riverside, I'm like, 3 of the 4 people in this car were born there. And
See,
it's
now
like,
you're just making them feel better.
I know. They're
Yeah.
like, not you, Dad.
You're the weird.
I'm like, 3 of the 4 people in this car have the same last name. Not you, Dad. Like, it's he's a, you know.
He's a good sport, I imagine.
That's right.
He introduced you at the Thurber House, right?
He did, yeah, and told a lot of embarrassing stories
Awesome.
about me.
Awesome.
That's what happens when you let
He owes
you
you
give your husband a
some shots.
microphone
Right.
and a crowd. It's
Yep.
never it's dicey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure I'll get it back. I have his law firm summer picnic tonight,
Oh,
so I could totally
okay.
embarrass
Oh,
him.
yeah.
I could make his performance
Yeah.
reviews hell for the next couple of years. So we'll see.
When the wife becomes part of the performance reviews, she's really outdone herself.
It's a problem. Yeah, that's right.
All right, so The Well Speaks of Its Own Poisons, out from Tupelo right now.
It is.
Look for sometime.
Well, you know, I've got a
Sometime.
chapbook coming out this
Okay,
year.
when's that coming out?
You know, I don't know.
Okay. Which press?
Dream Horse.
Okay.
So
Out in California, right?
yes.
Okay.
And it's called Disasterology, and it's a project chapbook about doomsday movies.
Fantastic.
So do something totally different.
Right.
A pet
That's so much
project
fun.
because I'm kind of like a B movie.
So did you
freak.
see San Andreas?
No,
Okay.
because I stopped writing these poems
You don't
when I
fuck
was
it up.
pregnant. I couldn't,
Sure.
like, my mind frame was not such that I could keep watching the world
It's
end
a little too delicate.
several times a week. Like, Netflix delivered disaster to my door. It's like, this is getting too intense, man. But, so yeah, that'll be coming out
Okay.
later this year. And then Weep Up, I don't know. It's not done yet.
Some.
We'll
Just know.
see. Hopefully it'll...
Bask in the fantasticness that is the new book.
We
and-
gotta let the book
Sure.
have its time.
Sure.
So yeah. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
It smells really good in here. I wish everyone could
We
smell
are
it.
going to enjoy these cookies. We're going to get Adam, who's secretly behind there, some cookies as well. And then we're going to have, I think T.A. Noonan is going to be our next guest in
Ooh,
August.
great.
So fantastic lady poets. So we'll see you next month.